In one of Oscar Wilde's great children's stories, a selfish giant who has a beautiful garden is afflicted by an everlasting winter with arid snow and cold breeze. This happens after he forbids children to enter his garden by building a giant fence around it. Only when the children find a way to get inside the garden after a hole in the wall does the giant realize that the rain and warmth had forsaken his garden precisely because he had been so ungracious to the children, who had had the times of their lives inside the auspices of the giant's backyard. The giant eventually realizes that one of the children is God, with whom he flies heavenwards. This story might be a perfect representation of two things that Richard Dawkins so beautifully presents in his wonderful book, The Selfish Gene. First, how group altruism in the genetic level defines the growth of a species. And second, how we can all, through careful deliberation, give up our selfish hardwiredness and possibly transcend it. Richard Dawkins is one of the leading public intellectuals of our time. He has gathered a notoriety of sorts in some religious circles, as he is wrongly labelled as a scientific reductionist. That is, someone who has taken the beauty of humankind, its evolution and its progress, and tried to define it purely in terms of genes and how they interact with surroundings as well as other genes. One nun who had read this book cried for weeks, thinking life to be meaningless if all of life could be so simply explained on a genetic level. But the selfish gene argues the opposite. Life can't all be so simply explained on a genetic level. Every time one talks about a gene, we have to remember the complexity that a gene possesses. The DNA information content in each nucleus is greater than 30 volumes of the Encyclopedia Britannica put together. This means that your brain, which is processing this information right now, has close to 1 trillion copies of the Encyclopedia Britannica. That's how huge numbers we're dealing with when we're talking about genes, and the book never loses touch of such astonishing facts. The other reason why things are not as easy as the horrified nun put it is because we have still not grasped how the first gene came about. But what we do know is that the very first self-replicating DNA made it possible for any such information on it to survive, and with it sprang multifarious lies as we see it. It begs belief that evolution, the tortuously slow process that only changes the tiniest fraction of an organism's genetic makeup in one lifetime, can produce such mind-boggling life, such as carnivorous trees, to male mantis who have sex even after its female counterpart eats its head off, to laborious ants who seem to be guided only by an urge to work, to human beings that are comprehending it all. But as Iago remarks in Shakespeare's Othello, there are many events in the womb of time which will be delivered. Even more brilliant is Richard's reflection on the self-preservation of the first gene, whose long-distant ancestors we are, when he says, "What weird engine of self-preservation would the millennia bring forth? 4,000 million years on, what was to be the fate of the ancient replicators? They did not die out, for they are the past masters of the survival arts. But do not look for them floating loose on the sea. They gave up that cavalier freedom long ago. Now they swarm in huge colonies, safe inside gigantic lumbering robots manipulating it by a remote control. They are in you and me. They created us, body and mind. And their preservation is the ultimate rationale for our existence." The book, as Richard himself puts it facetiously, should be titled "The Slightly Selfish Bit of the Chromosome" and "The Even More Selfish Little Bit of the Chromosome." But why is the book not titled so? Any single letter word might not bring out the best representation of the thesis of any popular book. How many bestsellers do you know whose title is a single word? A few? Besides, there also would be a cutoff in the higher end of the word limit. The number of books that have made it as bestsellers and that have a ridiculously long title, say more than 5 words, is also quite low. Maybe mathematically the best way a book survives to become a bestseller is to have a 3-word long title. This might be why most of Richard's books are 3-lettered. The Blind Watchmaker, The Ancestor's Tale, Unweaving the Rainbow, The God Delusion, etc. Dawkins uses such simple-looking mathematical formulations to give us an idea of how many animals in a species are likely to behave in a given manner to maximize their overall chances of survival. The titles of the chapters of the book are brilliantly titled, such as Why are people? Genesmanship. Nice guys finish first. You scratch my back, I'll ride on yours, to name a few. In these chapters, you'll find a critique of evolutionary theories of his fellow comrades, and as a sign of intellectual courage, critiques of his own as well. There's an age-old question that every child is often asked. Do you love your papa or do you love your mama more? Dawkins once inverts this question and makes us think whether our papas would love us more or our mamas. He builds his argument up and explains this brilliantly using the concept of parental investment. And he runs this argument up through a few generations and through larger and larger family trees. It might be such deliberations that make people believe in the absurdity of life, as if it were down simply to genes interacting with each other, and thus providing a bad rapport for Dawkins. But never does Dawkins say that he has painted the complete picture. He has, only rather daringly and beautifully, provided some elegant brush strokes to the understanding of the organisms at a genetic level. The bigger picture, as Dawkins himself puts it, is to be able to reflect on our own genetic makeup, to see how the replicators bind us in the tyranny of ourselves and how they affect us. Only then will we be able to fight the unfreedom set forth by them and move towards pure altruism, which is something unnatural, something nothing that the humankind has ever seen before. This is the essence of the study of genes, our selfish replicators.